Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Gran Turismo Series Racing League Season 38, Round 2. I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, or TX141, depending on what... Well, I've already said TX141 twice. Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And having already butchered the intro, we are back once again at the Catalonia Grand Prix circuit for what is the final instance of Round 2 tonight. We're here with EU Division 3 as they head around the Spanish circuit and looking to make a name for themselves, of course, as they go around the very twisty turns, 16 turns in total, and who will triumph by the end of it? Well, we'll just have to find out over 3 rounds of racing tonight. With races 1 and 2, of course, being your typical sprint races, both 6 laps in length, and then we move on to the more strategic race consisting of 11 laps, come race number 3, the 20-minute race, where we have that all-important mandatory pit stop, of course. But before we get even into the racing, or even the qualifying session, the 12-minute qualifying session that precedes and starts off all the racing action, of course, it's about time we started to introduce some of our drivers, and also gave you an update on the story so far in EU Division 3. So without further ado then, let's take to the racetrack. And we can see that straight away, a number of drivers already making their way around the circuit. 7 drivers on track right now. Out of the anticipated, I believe, 11 drivers attending tonight out of our pool of 12. We'll come back to the one driver who's had to drop out briefly shortly. So starting off then with our current Drivers' Championship leader, although he won't be happy that he's just been knocked sideways into the wall going into the chicane, is the Welshman of Vox Bacchus. Now he's making his way around out the final corner. He's currently leading on 46 points, having had the best results of anybody in round 1 last week, in the fact that he picked up a 3rd place in race number 1, a 2nd place in race number 2, and then the all-important 1st place in the bonus points round in race number 3. Now, it's not as though he's running away with this, but he is our leader by a small margin right now. And it's worth noting he is bringing something very different to the circuit today, in that Bacchus is bringing the Audi R8 LMS 2015 car. So this, I believe, is the first car we have seen at Catalonia over the course of round 2, which is going to be of the mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain. And this is a very different pick compared to what we're used to seeing here. Now we'll come back about the Audi in a little while, but we now move on to the Portuguese driver, if he is currently present, of Vitor Knight. He's not currently here, but he is 1 point off of Bacchus in 2nd place in the championship with 45 points. We then head to 3rd place then, currently owned by this man here, the Dutchman, Jerry, our driver, very friendly Dutchman, a very positive Dutchman, and he's bringing the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1 once again to the Spanish track. And well, last week, Jerry, on 42.5 points, had a good set of results. A 4th place in race number 1, a 3rd place in race number 2, and then a 2nd place in race number 3. His fortunes improving over the course of each individual race, and he'll be hunting that all-important race win, of course, to get himself right up in there, with the fact he's only 2.5 points off of Vitor Knight in the battle for 2nd in the championship. You then got to go 4 points down to this man right here, the Turkishman Ozan Ismail, who's making his way up towards turn number 3 right now, bringing the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1 as well. So Ismail last time out having a reasonable string of results, albeit he was plagued with a little bit of inconsistency, which saw him drop out of the top 3 at the end of the night in terms of the Drivers' Championship. Having picked up the best part of the win in race number 1, it then went a little bit south from that point onwards, in the fact that in race number 2 he ended up picking up what was in the end a 7th place finish. And in race number 3 it was more of a recovery effort, which he did succeed in, funnily enough, picking himself up a 4th place in race number 3, picking up on 38.5 points, and really he is at the bottom of our 4-way fight for the Drivers' Championship right now, and is really having to put in a good set of results tonight to get himself right up in the mix. Now I can see we've got a number of messages coming into the Twitch chat already, as we say hello to Jerry Racecar Driver, who's in the chat right now, although he's going to need to focus on driving shortly, that I'm sure. The Austrian Pingo Food, who was racing in EU Division 2 last night, you will have seen him if you tuned in for that, they say hi. And we also say hello to our Dutch 175, who's already commented on some absolutely fantastic liveries, which he's seeing up and down the circuit. And we hope you're all doing well, folks, tuning in. Of course, it's the middle of the week right now, we're over the hump in the week, and now we've only got 2 days to go until the weekend, of course. I hope everybody's staying well and staying positive. But before we go further down the Drivers' Championship, let's just go back up to introduce our Portuguese of Vitor Knight, running in the Hyundai Genesis and second place currently in the Drivers' Championship on 45 points. And Vitor having a very close affair with Vox Bacchus over the evening last time out. In the fact, in race number 1 he came second, in race number 2 he came first, and then in race number 3 he ended up coming third. So it was an improvement, and then it started to decline a little bit in race number 3, but I'm sure Vitor is going to be right up there once again, contesting the top spots. Now, as for P5 in the Drivers' Championship, this is where I come on to introduce the driver who will not be racing tonight, and that is the lone racer. The British driver, unfortunately, is feeling unwell at the moment. We wish him all the best, but he will not be participating tonight. So those 31 points he has in 5th place in the Drivers' Championship will not be added to tonight, and we can expect he may drop down the order somewhat, having the fact that he's going to miss all 3 races. But of course, health comes first, and we wish you well, lone racer, if you are tuning in right now, alternatively after the programme has aired. We hope you're doing well, and we look forward to having you back in round number 3 next week. Now we move on to then Heedless Sidays, Heedless Sidays, as I've been corrected to pronounce it now, and I'm very grateful for the gentleman in question, the British driver here, in providing me with the correct pronunciation of his username and his driver's name, although we'll be referring to him as Heedless from this point onwards, as he makes his way up the hill towards turn number 3, running in the Peugeot RCZ, a very interesting pick, much like what we saw with the Audi R8 earlier on, of our championship leader, Vox Bacchus. We are seeing some rather different picks today. Now, the Peugeot, I think, is going to be one of those ones which is really going to throw an unknown into the works, but we'll come back to that a bit later. As for Heedless himself, well, the fact he's currently on 29.5 points, so 1.5 points off of 5th in the Drivers' Championship, and he had a good, consistent set of results initially in round number 1 last week. A 5th place in race 1, a 6th place in race 2, and then it went a little bit wrong in race number 3, where he ended up picking up what was an 8th place finish, and it just didn't quite work out. But he's coming back, fighting fit and strong tonight, and we look forward to seeing what he's able to achieve. Now behind him, 3.5 points down on him, is the Welshman of Jenkster, who is currently sat here and is bringing the Porsche 911 RSR to the table. Now this is another mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, and from what I recall, it's actually quite an effective vehicle around the Catalonia circuit. We are seeing some huge car variety tonight in EU Division 3, and this is what we love to see. We're going to see a good mix of Group 3 cars, and well, it could lead to some very interesting results. But the Welshman on 26 points, having had a good, consistent night of racing, it should be pointed out, with 2 8th place finishes being backed up by, in the final race number 3, the bonus points race, picking up in the end what was a P7, although I believe he has just left the circuit. He'll be coming back shortly. Perhaps he's got some connectivity issues or some equipment issues that he's trying to resolve, but we look forward to seeing what Jenkster can do out on the circuit. Then in P8 in the Drivers' Championship is the American, racing under the German flag of Insubordinate 73, running around in the Mazda Atenza, which we saw yesterday in the capable hands of the Brit Notnats in EU Division 2, and it did scare the life out of a good number of drivers in the Aston Martin, and we can expect similar tales, hopefully, from Insubordinate tonight. Having had a reasonable string of results, albeit it wasn't as consistent as he would have liked, with the fact he ended up picking up a 6th place in race number 1, a last place in race number 2, and then he returned to form with another 6th place in race number 3. So a good recovery effort from Insubordinate there towards the end. Now we come over to our 9th place driver in the Drivers' Championship, and that is the driver of Remwan, or as we like to call him out of the circuit, Rem Wesh. Running in the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1 this evening. Now I believe, correct me if I'm wrong folks, it was Remwesh who was running the Ferrari 458 GT3 Italia last time out at the Nürburgring GP circuit, and it was an interesting choice, but it didn't quite pay off, and I think Remwesh was battered by the tyre wear, but also some inconsistencies on braking it into some of the hairpin style corners. But still, he's back today with 24 points to his name, having picked up a reasonable set of results in races 1 and 2, a 7th place in race 1 and a 5th place in race number 2, but then it all went a little bit to pot in race number 3. Sydney in the end comes second to last and only pick up 6 points. So he's quite well in there in terms of battling for the midfield table in the Drivers' Championship, and I'm sure he'll be moving up from P9 tonight if he can do so. Our 10th place driver, the Polishman of Luke 666111, who we refer to as Luke from this point onwards, bringing the Genesis tonight in a rather olive drab livery there. Quite a nice one in fact for a gentle colour livery. Running with 17.5 points to his name, having had a very difficult evening in round number 1 last time out, with the fact in race number 1 finishing second to last, in race number 2 picking up a 9th place finish, and then in race number 3 once again seeing himself drop a little bit down the order in a 10th place finish. But of course I'm sure he's going to bounce back tonight, and it'll all be good information, all good experience for him racing around the circuit for the EU divisions to come in future seasons. Then 11th place and chasing this man is the Brit of Spinky Bouton, bringing the Lancer, the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo final Group 3 tonight, and this is a little bit of an odd choice by comparison with the cars we are seeing. Now, this is a car which could be comparable to the Subaru WRX that we have seen earlier on in the season, not featured by Spinky of course, but by other drivers. But the thing about this car in particular will be it'll be all about the brakes. It's argued that this car has the strongest brakes in Group 3 by a significant margin, and Spinky will be doing good to utilise those brakes as much as possible into the heavy braking zones such as Turn 1 and Turn 10, which he's now about to come into. As for the story of Spinky's car so far, Spinky's driving so far in round number 1, only 16 points, had a very difficult evening last week in the fact he came last in race number 1, second to last in race number 2, and then it all went better, and well, he started to move a little bit out of the field, what with a 9th place finish I should say, in race number 3. And then last but not least, but not too far away, is Tamer 2010, the Egyptian driver racing under the Saudi Arabian flag, bringing the Peugeot RCZ here tonight. Now Tamer last time out had a good set of results and actually found himself not being the guy to always finish at the bottom of the table. He was worried about that going into the season, that he would see a potential repeat of season 37 where he would be coming dead last in his races, but in fact he did not come dead last in all his races, and that really got a huge round of applause from everybody watching, I know that. In the fact that Tamer in a race number 1 last time out finished in what was a 9th place, in race number 2 a 10th place, and then in race number 3 he found himself finishing at P12, but still he had a good start to the season, and we're hoping that he could build on that and even put more momentum behind him, and we wish him good luck. So that's all of our drivers introduced. Our trackside steward for tonight and our race host as a result is Pies1123, and I believe Pies right now is just chilling in the pits, as we can see here, sitting in with his Aston Martin DBR9 GT1. He won't be racing of course, I think he just likes to show it off to the fans and indeed to the cameramen around here, and of course why not when you're Pies1123, a veteran member of the GTSRL community and one of our much loved race hosts and race stewards. Now that's all of our drivers introduced, and that is the story. And as for the Constructors' Championship right now, it's worth pointing out that we have got a close fight for P1 in the Constructors' Championship. There's not too much of a gap. Currently, P1 is held by MVM Designs Racing Team, so that is the duo of Jerry, our driver, who is sat here in the pits with Aston Martin, and also Zanaismal, who is currently around on circuit. I believe here he is. There's Zanaismal, both running in the matching liveries on the same Aston Martin type car, and they're on 81 points, 9 points clear of team number 4, who's chasing after them. Team number 4 consisting of the Welshman of Vox Bacchus, well indeed the Welsh duo of Vox Bacchus, seen here coming down to turn 1, and we've also got Jenkster, who I believe is still trying to reconnect, and at this point in time is not at the circuit. As for team number 3, well, they are currently sat in 3rd place on 62.5 points, so 9.5 points down, and they are the duo of this man right here, the Polishman of Luke, and he is joined by the Portuguese of Vitor Knight. So these two working very hard and bringing Hyundais together tonight, and that is a good team combination right there, as we did see earlier on this week in EU Division 1 and EU Division 2. As for team number 6, well, they're currently in P4 in the Constructors' Championship and only 2 points off of these guys, so it is a very close competition for 3rd place of the Constructors. Unfortunately, we've only got the one driver from team number 4 tonight, and team number 6 tonight, and that is Heedless, bringing that Peugeot RCZ. Unfortunately, his teammate of Lone Racer is not taking part, as we mentioned earlier, so Heedless will have a lot on his shoulders today, but I'm sure he will rise to the occasion, or do his best to. And he will need to, because team number 2 sat in 5th place of the Constructors on 49.5 points, will want to capitalise on this, with Remwesh currently sat at the exit of the chicane at turn 15, and he is partnered up of course with Insubordinate, who is currently making his way up into turns 7 and 8. And then in 6th place, last but not least of our constructors, and still got some mileage to go, and indeed could get themselves up into the fight for a potential P6 or P5 in the constructors by the end of the season, is the duo of team number 5, consists of Tam Edgeworth 10, and we've also got Spinky Bill Tong, and I believe Spinky is here at the circuit somewhere. Yep, he is currently sat in the pits with that Mitsubishi. So that's the story so far. We have got a very close competition for the lead in both the constructors and drivers, and as we list our way back over to the chat, we say hello to Zoronic, and we hope you're doing well, and also to Remon VM1, who is clearly here tonight to support Jerry R Driver, based on the fact that the first words that he said in the chat are Jerry. Well, I'm going to presume that. Or perhaps he just likes saying Jerry as a form of saying hello. But jokes aside, hope you're doing well, folks, and I hope you are ready for some fantastic racing action tonight. Now let's talk a little bit about the cars whilst we have still got 13 minutes to go, and I'm just going to check my race briefer notes to see if we've got any issues whatsoever. I don't think we've got any words of concern that are coming out right now from anybody. Although I am just taking a look back. Yep, all of our drivers are just making their way into the voice chat with Pi, so that way they can hear when stock checks will be getting underway, and Jinkster returns to the circuit, of course. As to the car choices, well, the interesting figures with regards to this Peugeot, for example, as Heedless brings it out, and I think he's doing a practice pit stop run and trying to get a feel for the worn tyres. That's why he's putting in so many laps right now. The Peugeot is one of those oddball cars. It is not known for its straight line speed, but what it is known for is for its handling and the fact that it's also quite strong in terms of a low gear acceleration. It's got a pretty punchy second and third gear combination, and I think that could give the Peugeot a little bit of bite, particularly in Sector 3. Sector 1, it will be very planted through those medium speed apex corners, but I think where it's going to lose out is in the long straight from turn 16 down to turn 1, although we do have tuning available this season, so he may be able to tune some of that out as we get our first stuck check underway. With the same story of the Mitsubishi, albeit that's front engine rear wheel drive, whereas the Peugeot is mid engine rear wheel drive, and the Mitsubishi will all be about those very strong brakes. So as we pan down to the grid for stock check number 1, this will give our drivers a little bit of experience of what it's like in that long run down to turn 1 around other cars. We're going to have Jerry R Driver and Vox Backus leading us away from the front row. And it's go, go, go for all of our drivers as they all appear to make their way off the grid successfully. Nobody getting stuck in place. Nobody's got super glue on their tyres. And we do see the Porsche of Jenkster decide to do a little bit of rally cross there as they make their way behind all the traffic down into turn 1. And you can see here everybody concertina in, and Vox Backus with that Audi R8. Now that is going to be a very interesting car because it is very aggressive with regards to its tyre wear at times, albeit the thing that the Audi is very good at is handling, and when it's on a fresh pair of tyres it can be very strong in terms of qualifying trim, albeit not as strong as it used to be in GT Sport, as all of our drivers make their way up towards turn 4 here, and you can see already Vox and Jerry going toe to toe, but looking further back, Zanizmal and Remresh going side to side, very reminiscent of Hamilton versus Rosberg all the way back in the 2015 Formula 1 Championship. We know how that turned out, folks. Well, I think it was 2016 actually, where there's that major crash between the two of them going into turn 4, and that was huge drama unfolding, and Zanizmal and Remresh keeping it together there. Remresh finding a way through very tight on the inside into 4 as they make their way up to the combination of 7 and 8. We saw a lot of carnage here last night, and indeed we see some again, a Luke going right through the side of what was Jenkster at the time, and I think they're going to be told to calm that down. Well, I think it wasn't Jenkster actually, it was Insubordinate who got the long shove there, and I think there might be some words to just calm it down a little bit because we don't need a repeat of what we've previously seen. But nonetheless, as our drivers make their way up towards the hairpin, we can see that Backus has found his way past Jerry R Driver and Zanizmal on the inside of Remwesh, and Remwesh are losing control of the rear of the car there and actually having the opportunity to use the Turkishman's right hand door to stabilise his own car, so I think he'll be passing on a silent thank you to Zanizmal, although we won't be able to hear it of course. And as they all make their way into the chicane to complete this stuck check lap, well, you can see Spinky Biltong and Vitor Knight going side by side, and Spinky going as late on the brakes as possible and going too deep into the chicane, but he does have that inside. But as Vox Backus comes across to complete our stuck check race, winning by a very small margin over Jerry R Driver, Remwesh in P3, Heedless C-Days in P4, Heedless C-Days I should say, P5 to Zanizmal Ismail, Spinky Biltong P6, Vitor Knight P7, Jenkster P8, Luke P9. Insubordinate in the end will be coming home in P10, but I think he'll already be thinking to himself, you know what, it's just a start check race. Things are going to be calming down in the actual races as he just creeps across the line here very casually, and it's going to be Tamer who makes his way across the line as well in that Peugeot RCZ. Completing our start check race, and everybody was able to get away nice and clean and sound. So we just informed race control that all 11 drivers out on the circuit all looked fine to us, so I think we are going to be pretty good to go. We will probably have one more start check race at least just to make sure that, well, it's always good to double check things, but everyone's making their way back out into the circuit, heedless of leading our drivers out, of course, and I think this is for the principle that they all want to get as much practice time in as possible. Now, in terms of qualifying, we saw in EU Division 1 at the start of this week, a 1:43.6 was the pole time. And in EU Division 2 last night, we saw that the pole time was a 1:44.6, if my memory serves me correctly. So as a result, what would be the trend? Well, we'd perhaps expect to see a high 1:44 or a low 1:45 as pole in EU Division 3 if we take it as that each division, as we go down the lap time, starts to fall off a little bit. But it may be a different case, and maybe one or two drivers here are very strong at Catalonia, perhaps it's their favourite circuit, and they may actually find themselves out qualifying what would have been pole in EU Division 2, or perhaps even EU Division 1, although if that's the case, I think that will be a major surprise to some drivers. Now, talking about other cars here, let's talk a little bit about Jenkster and the Porsche 911 RSR. Now, the thing about the Welshman's choice here, the 911 RSR actually goes very nicely, in my personal opinion, around Catalonia. The reason for that is it's mid-engine rear-wheel drive in terms of drivetrain, but by comparison with some of the other cars available within that drivetrain category, the Porsche is incredibly stable on corner entry because the centre mass of the car, indeed the engine where the majority of the mass is concentrated, is centred so low at the rear of the car, or towards the middle stroke rear of the car, that it means you can feel very comfortable in bringing that car into the corners, and it feels more like it's going to understeer than oversteer, which is odd for a mid-engine rear-wheel drive machine. As we get our second start check race underway then, so we're going to pan down to the grid once again. And we check to see that Remon points out that he is Jerry R. Driver's brother. Well, that is very good to hear, and it's good to see that brotherly love being shown in terms of who's tuning in and supporting one another. As Pies also joins us on the grid at this time. And in fact, we're going to hop on board with Pies this time to see what it's like riding on board from the Audi R8's perspective. And look at that front visibility. That's going to be useful in the rundown to turn 1. And Pies jumping the start, well, that's just... I can't believe this. From a veteran hand as Pies, and there's a huge collision there. Well, I'm not sure what's happened, but I think one driver may have simply tried to jump the start and as a result got held up. Well, got held in place as everybody tried to find their way through, but as they all make their way down towards turn 1, we can see that this time it is Jenkster who's going to lead our drivers around, and Heedless making his way up the inside but being forced back to the outside by Ismail. And as they make their way into turn 3, you can see that Peugeot very stable when it goes into these medium speed apex corners, although it is getting caught in the wash of the dirty air of Jenkster's car there and does go out a little bit wide, and it's for Remwesh to capitalise on it. That Aston Martin right now, the cognizant Aston Martin, looking very, very strong, making its way into turn 4. There is a lot of speed in that Aston Martin for sure. But as they make their way up into turn 5 now, coming into the first of the 3 hairpin style corners at the circuit, what we can see is that, well, I say 2 hairpin style corners at the circuit. What we can see is that Remwesh is still battling side by side with Heedless, going a bit deep into turn 5 and now finding himself in the lead of this pair as they make their way up the hill to turn 9. And Spinky Biltong in that Mitsubishi doing a very nice job of simply nailing it through the corners and into those braking zones. And that's the one thing, as we said earlier, although he goes a bit wide there, and that's going to give him a half-second penalty. The one thing about that Mitsubishi is it has such strong brakes, you'll never outbrake that Mitsubishi into a corner unless the driver's not as confident as you in terms of the braking zone. But equal drivers, that Mitsubishi will be the last one to brake, and that's going to give him a massive advantage into those heavy braking zones around this circuit, because he can be the one to go very deep on the brakes and go for those all-daring defences, alternatively those all-daring overtakes. But it's going to be Vitor Knight as they come through the final chicane then, who is going to lead our order across that timing line to complete this final stock jet race. Well, he's the second one, I believe, and nicely done by Vitor there, bringing home the Hyundai, the Portuguese. And it's a drag race between Jenkster and Heedless, and you can see that Heedless just missing out as Jenkster pulls a little bit away. Renwash in P4, Bacchus in P5, Jerry R Drive P6, Spinky Bultong P7, Tamer P8, Insubordinate in P9, and Burning, that boy is going to just run across the line with that penalty. In fact, he does burn it. Pies in P10, Zanai will be coming across in P11, and then it will be a Luke in P12, rounding off our field for the second Stuck Check race. And well, congratulations to all of our drivers for making it off the line. And as everybody gets teleported back to the pits in rather odd fashion, we have got about 3.5 minutes to go before we get underway with qualifying. So of course, if you haven't already got yourself a drink, alternatively some snacks, or you haven't been to the bathroom and you're trying to hold it in right now, don't hold it in, go let it out and then come back for some good old-fashioned racing entertainment, because we will be getting underway qualifying in now 3 minutes time. As we're taking a brief break from Stuck Checks, we're just going to take a quick sip of water, and we will take a look through the field and talk about some of the other cars available. And it should be pointed out that every Group 3 car is available to our drivers, so some drivers may have tested cars such as the Renault RS01, the Toyota Supra, the Toyota FT1 and the Honda NSX, but we have seen some commonalities, and it's EU Division 3 who has brought a huge variety choice tonight. Although we do have the Hyundai here as exemplified by Vitor Knight, the Hyundai being the stronger cornering car and being quite rapid initially on those straights, particularly if it's not exposed in its 6th gear where it loses out by comparison with the Aston Martin. So we're expecting good things from Vitor Knight, of course, and indeed Luke, who's also running the Hyundai. We should expect this machine to be very strong. And as we look around here, we can see that only 2 drivers making their way onto the circuit right now. And whilst we are waiting to get underway, be sure to let me know who you're going to be supporting, what you're tuning in for, or if you're just tuning in for everybody. The big question will be for the guys, what are they able to achieve in terms of qualifying? Well, the target will be, I think, particularly for the Hyundai drivers, they need to be on that front row, because in the drag race down towards turn 1, the Aston Martin does find its way up, as we hear that Pingo Phone is tuning in for the carnage first and foremost. Well, we hope there's not too much carnage tonight, but I hear what you're saying. But the Hyundai has the stronger initial acceleration, but then the Aston Martin really takes over. Some cars where we may expect them to bog down, with the Mazda Atenza was a little bit weaker on the start, as we saw it seem to experience an initial lag, that turbo lag, before it finally got underway, and then it absolutely bolted. And looking further afield around the cars, the Audi R8 is going to be an interesting one, because it doesn't have that turbo. It's a reasonable starter from what I recall, albeit not as strong as the Aston Martin, although I could be wrong in my memory. And then we have got, well, I'm just trying to find the driver for you. The chap with the Mitsubishi, here he is, Spinky Bultong. Now, I think there's quite a bit of turbo lag associated with that Mitsubishi when it gets off the line, and it does not have the best acceleration by default, so he will have had to do a lot of tuning in order to get the acceleration of that Mitsubishi to work and to get that turbo to settle nicely. But we are just waiting now. We've probably just got the best part of 30 seconds or so to go before we get underway. And then we'll be good to go, as we see Vitor Knight here doing a practice start on the start grid, trying to get a feel for exactly when he's going to want to release that throttle, and gets a bit of wheel spin initially, in fact way too much wheel spin, and instead does a 180. But here we go, ladies and gentlemen, qualifying is about to get underway. 12 minutes, who's going to be on pole by the end of it? Let's find out. Pardon me, as everybody does get the heads up from Pies that it's go, 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 get out there, get moving and get charging out there. And we're going to be seeing that it'll be Insubordinate who is going to be the first driver to take to the track in the rather fetching liveried Mazda Atenza. As he makes his way down out of the pit lane, we can see everybody making their way out in quick possible fashion, and we can see already that Insubordinate burning some fuel as he makes his way into turn one. I think a number of drivers may go for the fuel burning tactic here, just trying to burn some fuel out of the car to get it nice and light, so that way they can set 1 or 2 really strong qualifying laps. Although we can see that Insubordinate is becoming a little bit of a rolling roadblock, but he does move to the outside of the incoming through turn 3 in order to let his peers come through, which is all fair, and he makes his way back onto the circuit very gradually. So it'll be Jerry, our driver, instead, who is going to be our lead driver around in qualifying for the time being. And of course, remember, our drivers do need to space out. They're expected to give one another ample space on circuit so as not to impede one another in qualifying or pick up a distant tow. The tow distance, of course, being 0.75 seconds off of the rear of another car. As we see Jerry, our driver, warming up those racing mediums. He's got Renwish following after him right now. And I think one of the ideas might be that this pack of 3 cars up front, Vitor Knight being the third of those cars, they're trying to pull a little bit away from the field as Renwish goes spinning off into the wall, coming out of turn 7 up into 8 already. And now he's got to get that car settled, or he's going to have to restart and reset to the pits, which, if so, that is going to cost him a lot of time in qualifying. And I was just about to say that these drivers are pushing hard initially to get the heat in their tyres and to get themselves a lot of space out on track, because now Vitor Knight, what he'll be able to do as he comes up towards the chicane, he can really start to lift out of the throttle and just gently coast his way up to the chicane. The tyres will be nice and hot. He's already doing it. He's demonstrated exactly what we're talking about, and he can give himself a nice bit of space to Jerry, our driver, up front. Now, speaking of up front, let's ride on board then on the bumper of Jerry, our driver, as he makes his way round and will take you through his qualifying lap. So he comes out the final corner, up towards 5th gear, hitting 120 miles an hour as he makes the upshift, and now charging down towards the first corner for the first time asking on a flying lap. And you can see how he's geared the Aston Martin. He has geared it for acceleration, expected a top end speed of about 163 into his braking zone, 162 on the readings there. And as he makes his way into the apex, downshift in the second just to get the car settled into the corner, and now using the full width for the exit of turn 2 before flicking it left to right for turn number 3, and now just gradually trying to get that throttle pressed down. A little bit too much throttle initially into turn 3, saw him lose the tightness on the apex, and that's why he understeered a little bit and had to instead lift out. But now coming into turn 5 for sector 2 here, a nice run into 3rd gear, downshifted to 2nd. He's not feeling as though he's getting enough bite on that front end in 3rd gear, and that's why he's doing that downshift. That will cost him a small bit of time, but he'll probably make up for it as a result of the turning, as he does go overly deep into the hairpin initially and does have to get the car stopped, and now makes his way up towards 7 and 8. And then turn 7 here, you want to get a really nice line into 7, and he has gone a little bit deep into 7 and has actually had to correct the car. So it's not looking the best of laps for Jerry, our driver, right now. I think he's still trying to get some heat in those tyres as he makes his way up through 9 and gets that settled in eventually. And now making his way up towards 10 as he comes to the end of sector 2. And he's going to cross that timing line now for sector 2, a 1:11.6. Not terrible, but not the best of laps either. But we will wait and find out in terms of how everybody else does before we pass final judgment on this opening lap. But there are some areas where we can see he will be planning to improve, and I think he's already started to note them in his head as he makes his way through turn 12 and up towards turn 13 now. Braking down to 3rd gear here. Will he go down to 2nd to turn it? He's got a lot of understeer on that Aston Martin, it should be noted, as he goes down to 1st gear for the opening part of the chicane, then upshifts it to 2nd and gets the car stabilised. And as he makes his way through the final corner, fully planted to the floor in terms of the throttle, and across the line he comes, and it is going to be a 1:47.6 our opener, and Vitor Knight already on a much faster lap. I believe it is a 47 point... Well, hold on a second. It is... We have got no updates on our timing screens right now, folks. I'm not sure what's happened to our timing screens. It looks as though Vitor Knight did set a faster lap, but it hasn't updated for us right now. So we're going to stay with Vox Bacchus as he makes his way out of the final quarter here and across the start-finish line on a 47.2. So I believe Vox Bacchus right now holding the lead, provisional lead, and Heedless with 150.3. He'll be looking to improve that, as Sir Niasmal has definitely been impeded somewhere on his lap. Alternatively, had to back off somewhere, that 55.8. That is not indicative of a qualifying lap. As Luke sets a 151.5, so 1.2 seconds off of Heedless right now, but Tamer follows in behind him, only 3.5 tenths down, mind you, in the Peugeot RCZ with a 51.9. Ismail then having to go once again, and Vitor Knight making his way around the circuit as we see Insubordinate in the pits right now, going for a pit stop to get off of those tyres which have got a little bit of scrub on them and get onto a fresher pair for going for his first flying lap. But as we hop away from the pits and back to trackside right now, after the first round of qualifying laps, we've got 8 drivers who've set a time, and Renwesh having that disastrous opening warm-up lap and a 52.4 being his lap so far, as we say hello to Gomez in the chat and wish you well, Gomez. I know who you'll be cheering on tonight. It'll be the Portuguese compatriot of yourself, and that is Vitor Knight, of course, won't it? But I hope you're doing good, my friend. And as we make our way around the circuit with Renwesh, we're looking at Renwesh's car right now, having a bit of difficulty getting it settled into braking into turn 4. We can see Spinky Bulltog staying out the way, and actually, that's something we have not seen. Spinky over 49.0 in the Mitsubishi. Now, we have still got plenty of time to go in this qualifying session. That Mitsubishi already showing a good pace in terms of qualifying, as we then see that Vitor Knight improves to a 45.8. My goodness, 1.4 seconds clear of the rest of the field, and we can see right now that Vox Bacchus in P2 but 1.4 seconds down is on a personal best, but this isn't going to be enough to take provisional pole off of Vitor Knight, as Vitor really raises the bar and then some, and in return it is a 46.5 from Bacchus, so now 7 tenths off. He has halved the deficit to our provisional pole sitter, and what can everybody do as Ismail comes across and sets a 46.7, so a good demonstration from Ismail in the Aston Martin DBR9 here. But I do think that Vitor really feels as though he's in the zone right now as he's making his way up towards turn 5. He's at the foreground of your camera shot as we see Jerry R. Driver following him around right now in that Aston Martin there. And Jerry R. Driver sat on that 47.6 and 1 whole second down on Ismail, who is P3 ahead of him. And the battle for lower down the field, we can see that Luke is going personal best right now in Sector 1, as we note that Spinky Bulltong has dropped to P6 for all the place changes. And, well, Luke not going perfectly towards the end of Sector, losing a bit of time through turn 3 by the looks of things, and as he makes his way down towards the start of Sector 2, the start of Sector 2, which is turn 5 after turn 4, we can see that Luke is not having the best of times and having a bit of difficulty in getting the car to turn in and using first gear to do so. But nonetheless, all of them making their way around the circuit still, and we continue to look around. We see Heedless here on that 50.3. The Peugeot not quite working out as well as it perhaps could for the British driver right now, but we'll wait and see. I believe the gentleman in question is actually from Scotland. In fact, I'll just double check my briefing notes whilst he's making his way around, and he's actually 2.5 tenths up already. So this is a sizable improvement from Heedless. Heedies, well, yeah, that's going to be one. Hades, Hoodies, whatever you say, it's all got cooties. But nonetheless, as Heedless makes his way around through turn 12 at this point and comes down towards turn 13, this is looking to be a very strong lap, and indeed I can confirm that the chap in question is from Scotland, so he's representing the northern half of the United Kingdom tonight as he makes his way through the final corner here, flashing his lights as well. I'm not sure if that's to the cameraman or to say he's on a fast lap, but it's looking pretty fast. It's looking like a 48, and it's a 48.2. He's improved by 2.1 seconds, moving him up to a P5 as a lot of drivers are coming into the pits to put on a fresh pair of boots before going again for the final third of qualifying. 4 minutes to go, ladies and gentlemen, before we get underway with race number 1, and our grid positions will be confirmed. And we can see right now Vitor Knight still in a very strong position up front with that provisional pole, that 45.8, still 7 tenths clear of anybody else's effort, and he's currently on an out lap before another flying lap, and he will have 2 flying laps to go after this one to improve on that time. Can he potentially get himself into the 44s? We will wait and find out, of course. Bacchus right now on an out lap as well, and he has got Tamir behind him, the Egyptian driver here racing behind him right now, and where it looks as though he's trying to just follow him around, as we can see that Bacchus does get out of the way, and Tamir 3 tenths up coming into sector number 2. A good effort here, and I think Bacchus has just got to be a little bit careful here because he is compromising a driver who is on a fast lap, and Bacchus is on a out lap, and actually that has compromised Tamir's lap completely there. You see he had to lift off the throttle and actually brake coming out the corner, so I don't think he's going to be too happy as he makes his way around the rest of the circuit, and that'll be something that'll be probably brought up as a little bit of a question to the stewards afterwards. Meanwhile, Zanizmal, our P3 driver, provisionally right now on that 46.7, he'll feel that he will have something to do in order to close that gap of 2 attempts to Bacchus in qualifying. So indeed, I think it's going to be, my prediction will be Vitor Knight on pole, and it will be Bacchus or Zanizmal who's going to be lined up alongside him. So as all of our drivers come across the line then to begin their final 2 flying laps, it will be Vitor Knight who'll be the first to go as he starts to make his way around the track, and Bacchus will be following suit shortly as we see Zanizmal coming into the pits one more time. This is going to be a late call, and he will need to be quick here in terms of getting around there as we see Jerry, our driver, tripping over with Renwesh, and I think Renwesh right now coming through the chicane. Is he going to go onto another lap, or is he going to pit and go to a fresh set of tyres? If he's going to pit, he's got to do it urgently. He's not going to pit. In fact, he hasn't got the time to, so he's making the call to go one last time, and his current lap is a 49.4, and he will need to improve by 1.5 tenths to close the gap to Luke, the Polishman sat in P8 right now, who he'll want to pip to P8 and get himself up onto that full throw of the grid, of course. Zanizmal will have to be aware of the fact a driver is on a fast lap, and instead he decides to go deep. Also, other drivers I think are going to get pulled up in front of the stewards following this one with regards to behaviour in qualifying, because the etiquette is not what we'd perhaps expect tonight, but nonetheless we continue, we look forward, and we see that Bacchus right now making his way out of what was turn number 4 and down towards 5 as Vitor Knight, he makes his way up to the end of sector 2. Is this an improved sector from Vitor? It is by 3 tenths, so Vitor is on a flying lap, literally he's flying around there, and the only thing he's not drinking right now is Red Bulls, which would give him wings, but he hasn't got wings right now. Instead, he's just got a Hyundai with 4 tyres, and he's making it work like the dream. It's clockwork for Vitor. As we see on our timing screens, he's going faster and faster by the corner, by the lap, and now we wait to see as he comes out the final chicane and makes his way around turn 16. How much of an improvement will this be? Will it be 3 tenths? Will it be a little less? Will it be a little more? He comes around, and our survey is going to say a 45.6, so he lost 2 tenths of the final sector, but still raising the bar significantly. And as Bacchus makes his way now up towards the turn 13 entry into the chicane here, so he's coming down the hill now to the chicane. How much can he improve by, and can he close the gap, which is now 8 tenths to the pole sitter, as Bacchus clips too much of the turn 14 curve, and that is an aborted lap. And if he can get it turned around quickly, he might be able to go one last time. But we see here that Zanizmal having got behind traffic here, and that's going to cost him coming onto his final qualifying lap. He'll need to get around, but he's going to have to try and find a way to sort this out, because this, unfortunately, we've got 3 drivers all running nose to tail as they go onto their final laps, and Zanizmal crosses the line with literally half a second to spare, and we've got a car spun out on the start-finish straight. What on earth has happened there? Tamer has spun out, and he's stuck right on the start-finish line there. As all our drivers come through, we can see a number of drivers have already crossed the line to complete their qualifying. Jerry, our driver, in the end, not improving from his base lap of a 47.6, so he's currently provisional P4. Spinky Biltong, the Mitsubishi driver of 48.1, couldn't really improve too much after that 5th lap around the circuit, and we can see that he did pip Luke to P8 in the end, jumping him by the best part of what was 7.5 tenths, as we see in the rear view camera shot. Insubordinate coming across the line and improving to a 47.8, so moving up to provisional P7 right now, but he'll be waiting to see what he's able to do a little bit later. As we say good evening to Swee Lerb, and thank you for subscribing at Tier 1 Lerb. I'm not sure what subscriptions do on Twitch, but I'm very grateful nonetheless. And as we look further around the field, we can see that we've still got that little bit of a traffic jam in the run up towards turn number 9, but right now coming out of the final corner, we're just trying to find him for you, ladies and gentlemen, and we can't find, I think it's Vitor Knight, as he's on another lap, and he improves by 3 tenths to a 45.3, so he finally found the lap he was looking for earlier on, and it's 1.1 seconds up. And how can anyone respond? Well, Bacchus isn't going to be able to respond, because that lap is history, and the fact he's got a penalty. The same with Renwesh. And the only other driver who may improve right now is Heedless Seadays, who's currently P6 as he comes out, and it's not going to be an improvement from the Scottishman there as he comes across the line, and that is his qualifying session complete. So the last 2 drivers to come around right now, starting with Renwesh, who's going to be coming out that final corner on a 47.7 right now, which I think he'll be pleased with, because that puts him right in amongst the mid-pack. And as he comes out of the final corner to complete his lap, this is not going to be an improvement, but he'll be grateful for the time around the circuit, and the same with Bacchus. So in the end then, pole position by 1.1 seconds goes to Vitor Knight from Portugal on a 45.3. A phenomenal lap, and well clear of the rest of the field. Bacchus in P2 with the Audi R8, just pipping Zanizmal to the front row. The Turkishman parked up on the exit of turn 4 right now. He'll be happy with the lap and the fact he's on he's on the second row of the grid in P3, and he has got the ability to chase Backus down. Jerry R Driver will be alongside him. The Dutchman there missing out on P3 by almost a second as well, and just clutching P4 by the best part of 300ths of a second. Ahead of Remwesh, he'll be starting off our third row, and alongside him will be Heedless Sides, who almost managed to get himself into P5 in the Peugeot. Now that is one heck of an effort. Insubordinate, meanwhile, in the Mazda Atenza, will be starting off our fourth row. Alongside him will be a Jenkster, and then on our fifth row of the grid, it will be Spinky Biltong, who will be joined alongside by Luke. So hold on a second. Yep, I believe that's correct. So Spinky ended actually getting knocked down the order after everything considered. I think there might have been a little bit of a glitch on our timing screens there, folks. And Luke will be starting us off in P10, and then Tamer 2010 will be starting off the sixth and final row. He'll be in 11th, and by his Lonesome with the absence of a lone racer. So that is our grid for the race number 1 tonight, and now we wait to get underway with some racing action. But we're just taking a brief moment to compose ourselves. Indeed, I think our drivers will be as well, before we get underway with race number 1. It should be coming at your door any moment now. Or probably within the next 2 to 3 minutes when we get that time of day change. And Subordinate doing a little bit of drifting into turn 1 there, will spinning the car around. I think he's just a little bit eager to get racing, is the American. And we can definitely see that Lerb is most likely going to be cheering on Insubordinate tonight, given the fact he is a big fan of the Atenza, as he refers to it as bulky and pretty in the Twitch chat. And all our drives now with the time of day change. The sun has come back out. It's shining on the Spanish circuit once again, and Heedless Sides is making his way through towards the pit exit right now, as he comes all the way down here. Heedless will be feeling quite happy the fact he's right in the mid-pack, of course, and we'll be wondering what he's able to achieve. Could he creep into that top 5 and pick up some good results tonight? I think this man could right here. And indeed, picking the mother of all meme cars in the GT Sport community, the Peugeot RCZ. I'm not 100% sure where the memes regarding this car come from, but it is seen as the meme machine, but it is a strong car nonetheless at the right circuits, and we're looking forward to seeing what Heedless can do as he makes his way down towards turn number 4. And it does look so planted on the brakes into these corners, although traction control is blipping quite a bit, and I think that might be helping with some of the rear end power issues when it absolutely deploys a huge chunk of power. Indeed, we've all got our fingers crossed that we'll get a nice clean turn 1, but we'll have to wait and find out. And just counting down the minutes now. And I believe there may be a penalty for one of the drivers. I think Remwesh does have a grid place penalty. Not sure how big the penalty is going into this race, but I think we will see a slight change in our starting order. But we're going to be finding out any moment soon. We're just waiting for the grid to be finalised, and then everybody will be out for race number 1. But in the meantime, here's the Mitsubishi Evo, the Mines livery. Now this is in dedication to Mines, which is one of the dedicated tuners for Mitsubishi machinery, as I understand it. Got a long history, have Mines, or Mines, however you want to say it. And Jenkster, well, in the Porsche, brings something different to the table. And one of the things about the Porsche is it's very good to its tyres. So I think perhaps in races 1 and 2, Jenkster may not be able to apply that. As we get underway then with race number 1, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The countdown is set. And who is going to be your victor come the end of the race? So as we pan down to the grid then, it's Vitor Knight on the right and it's Vox Bacchus on the left. Hyundai versus Audi in the run to turn 1, but behind them, 2 Aston Martin DBR9s as an Eisman Jerry R driver. They'll be wanting to pip those guys up front in that drag race. And it's lights out and away we go, and Backus getting a much better start than Vitor Knight, and look at that Audi go. Well, it was a sleeper, ladies and gentlemen, and that launch control on that Audi is phenomenal. Backus has nailed the start, and Zanai well. Jerry R driver have also got past Vitor Knight. Vitor did not have a good start in the Hyundai, and now he's got to find a way back into this as we see a little bit of contact from Jigsaw to the back of Vitor Knight, and hold on a second, Renwish goes spinning there, and there's a wait for Renwish to return to track. I think two drivers feel there was a major incident, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. Looks like Spinky, Bouton and Tamer are both waiting up for Renwish to bring the car back around, but up front Backus fighting away, and you can see Jerry R driver battling with Vitor Knight. Vitor's already got back past the drivers who took him at the start almost. He's going side by side with Jerry into turn 5. He's going to be on the inside. I think he's already got those 2 places back, and he can go hunting the Audi ahead of him as we see behind Instaborder and Headley's battling for P4 right now, and the Scotsman versus the American. Who's going to come out on top as they go up the hill into turn 9? Well, I think it's going to be Heedless. As you can see, Jerry R driver still battling with Vitor, and in fact making a move into turn 7, and as they come up into 9, surely Jerry's not going to try to hold it on the outside into 9. He does try to, and he's got the grip, and Vitor gives him the space. The great respect shown between these two, and it's 2 by 2. Hurrah, hurrah, as they come down to turn 10, and there's a bit of contact between Heedless and Insubordinate, but I think it's quite innocent, and Vitor got blocked off there by Jerry R driver, and as a result Insubordinate got blocked off, and that means that Heedless is up into P4. That little Peugeot can go, and indeed is now hunting for the podium, and Jegster behind is trying to get in on the mix of this, albeit the Porsche driver has got Zanaisval all over the back of him after Zanaisval dropped down the field through turn 3. And as we can see, as they come around the final corner to complete lap number 1, Vox Backus right now with a gap of 1.2 seconds off a Jerry R driver who's in P2, followed by Vitor Knight. There's Heedless Cides, followed by Savoda. There's Jakester, followed by Zanaisval. Then Luke, followed by Tamer. Then Spinky Bouton and Remwish. These guys battling at the back after waiting at the start. But we'll come back to that very shortly. But we can see going down to turn 1 for the second time of asking. Nothing between our top 3, but in the battle for P5, there is contact, and Jakester is sent flying off the circuit there, and I'm not sure whether Zanaisval gave him a tap on the rear. I think it looked like it, but Jigster has gone flying off, and I think he will be absolutely livid with that unless he just missed his braking zone. And in the battle for P9, we can see that Renwish has got past Tamer, and Tamer is holding off the Mitsubishi and Spinky Bouton. And in fact, let's find out what happened on that opening lap between these 3. Now you're going to see as we come down towards turn number 1 at the start here that Renwish is effectively on your left hand side at the rear of your camera shot, the camera panning over into right now, and he found himself really in a 4-wide situation alongside Spinky, and I think here what's going to happen is Spinky's going to get in there and just taps the inside of the car and immediately waits, and Tamer was completely innocent, didn't need to wait, but did so anyway, being the good sportsman there. So that's great to see for the Egyptian driver, albeit he has lost a lot of ground, but he'll try and make that up in future races, I am sure. Nonetheless, Vox Backus is now being chased down by Vitor Knight. Vitor has cleared Jerry R driver. That happened off camera in the meantime, and Jerry up to P3, but not really making much more progress than that after getting past Vitor Knight at the start, and Vitor is now back past him, as we can see that Heedless in P4 and Zanaisval in P6, making his way around behind Insubordinate, and we've got a bit of dust being kicked up by Heedless here. The Peugeot driver using the full width of the track to get as much pace out of the Peugeot where he can, because of the fact that really right now that Peugeot needs to maximise its corner speeds as much as possible, and Insubordinate feeling a lot of pressure right now. The Atenza driver from the Aston Martin driver behind him as they make their way onto the next lap, and Zanaisval picks up a half-second penalty at the chicane, and he will need to burn that at the next penalty zone, and he's going to go for the move on Insubordinate. But remember now, the fact he's going to have to get past, that's going to cost him a huge amount of time as he has to burn the penalty. No, he burns it into turn 1, a little bit cheeky there as they make their way through the corner. So he's cleared most of that penalty, and we've got a driver backwards, and it's Tamer at the chicane, unfortunately for Tamer. And in the battle for P8 right now, we can see Jengster and Renwish going side by side here into turn 1, and Renwish has got the run, although Jengster tries to come back by switching to the inside. He hasn't got it on the brakes. Renwish goes all the way in on the brakes, and Spinky Biltong is following the pair ahead of him right now as we do ride on board with the Mitsubishi driver, and we can see absolutely pushing it to his utmost here, trying to chase after Jengster, running on board the hood. And will he go for a move up the inside into turn 4? No, he doesn't. He hasn't got it on the brakes, and Jengster instead goes a little deep, and you can see Spinky there knows he can release those brakes so early on the Mitsubishi. It stops on a diamond. Stops on a dime is the saying, or if it could stop on a diamond, that'd be fantastic. As Jerry R driving out, falling into the clutches of Insubordinate. Insubordinate, and Insubordinate has got past Heedless. That happened into turn 4, I believe, and we didn't quite get to see that, but Heedless is making his way after Insubordinate right now, but has got a face full of Zanizmal trying to chase him. The Turkish driver will want to get back into that top 5, and we'll know he should be on that podium based on the way things have gone right now after what was a brilliant start, only to be absolutely marred in turn 3 on lap 1. And you can see Heedless feeling a huge amount of pressure from the guys behind as we jump on board with Jerry R Driver and look back from his car, and you can see the chain of cars right now, the 4 of them all racing a line astern as Insubordinate makes a small mistake getting on the power a little too soon coming out of turn 15, and this will give Insubordinate a difficulty because now he won't be close enough to challenge Jerry R Driver, although he will have the distant toe of Jerry R Driver, it should be pointed out. But as we hop back to our exterior cameras right now, you can see they're all trying to use that slipstream to gain advantage on one another, and it should be pointed out that in the run down to turn 1, it appears that Vox Bacchus has been overtaken by Vitor Knight. I think he got him on the straight, and now Vitor Knight is pulling away from Vox Bacchus, so the Audi driver led for 3 laps, but in the end Vitor Knight has just pulled the cloth over him and pulled it all away from him. So with Bacchus now running in P2, I think he'll be clear of the guys behind, although Jerry R Driver will try and find a way of closing down that gap of 2.5 seconds over the course of the next 3 laps, but he will have a lot of action from that Atenza. The Atenza going onto the grass there at turn 4, Insubordinate running onto the apex grass, and that has cost him the momentum. He's out the slipstream with Jerry R Driver now, so he is going to be vulnerable to the speed of Zanizmal behind him. Of course, Zanizmal and Jerry being teammates here, they'll want to try and work it together as Zanizmal goes very deep into turn 7. He just catches the car, and Heedless is going to try and find a way past. He's got the momentum, and he's going to be on the inside into turn 9 as Zanizmal tries to stay to the outside, but it's so difficult for him there, and I think Heedless has got it, and Zanizmal picks up a penalty for running wide, albeit he will say that he went wide because of the fact he was in contact with Heedless, but Heedless gives the spot back by looks of things at turn 10, and they carry on their merry way nonetheless, although Zanizmal will have to burn that penalty on the start-finish straight. But up front it's Vitor, still 2.6 seconds clear of Vox Bacchus right now, who is gradually falling back into the clutches of Jerry R Driver. That gap now closed down by half a second over the course of sector 3 alone so far. That is a huge gap drop already by Jerry R Driver. He is putting the hammer down right now, is the Dutchman, and chasing after Bacchus like a moth to a candle flame. You imagine that he really wants to be on that front row alongside Vitor Knight in race number 2. He wants to prove a point to Vitor that Vitor's not going to have it all his own way tonight. And behind them in that battle for P5, Zanizmal's burned his penalty. Heedless is going to have the momentum as a result, and as they go into turn number 1, it should be a case that Heedless just has it naturally on the momentum, and indeed he does. He does it on the brakes, and Zanizmal has to follow it through. Meanwhile, behind Luke in P7, the Polish driver, who we haven't seen too much of, having a peaceful time there, but we're going to hop back to our battle for P5 as we see Zanizmal getting the better run out of turn 3. The Pug just does not have any legs on those straights or any acceleration zones by comparison to that Aston Martin. It's got the cornering down, it just can't get the power down, and that's the problem with the car. He closes up so much through the corners, but as soon as there's an acceleration zone, it's almost as if Zanizmal's in a different race. And I'm sure Heedless right now will probably be shouting out in the famous words of Fernando Alonso, it's a GP2 engine in this car, because he just can't get any traction on a leader in terms of getting that speed down the straights by comparison with the Aston Martins around him. But Heedless doing a great job as it is. It should be pointed out that Peugeot performing above expectation as Remwesh in P8 right now in a bit of a silent situation, and Spinky and Jakester battling still for P9 on lap number 5 at turn 5. Quite a gap between a good chunk of the field here with all the incidents that happened on the opening laps. And I think as they make their way, we have got a yellow flag, and it is Remwesh. What has happened to the British driver as Spinky and Jakester make their way past him, and he now has to recover. That Aston Martin not stable at all. So he was coming down into turn 7, and does he run wide here out onto the exit curve and entry curve into turn 8? And he goes onto the gravel, in fact, and that's what sends him into the wall. He was created. He was a traveller in his own car. As we begin the final lap, it is Vitor Knight still 3.7 seconds clear of Vox Bacchus, who has got away from Jerry R Driver, it should be pointed out. He's actually opened that gap up to 3.2 seconds, and I think Jerry R Driver may have had a penalty, because as we look at his previous lap, we can see it was a 48.7. There was definitely some sort of a mistake in there, if not a penalty, because that is not the pace we'd be expecting for Jerry. We'd be expecting at 47s from the Dutchman, I believe, as they make their way up through turn 3 and towards 4 now. And it's someone that will be looking to capitalise on it on this, and the bulkier tens, the driver, will want to get on that podium as they come up towards turn number 4. And there's no move at the moment, but Insubordinate will know now he's got the opportunity. He's got 2 sectors where he can close up on the Aston Martin, and as they make their way charging down towards turn number 5 here, and we say hello to Yaya777 in the chat very quickly. Jerry parking it on the apex of turn 5 and simply blocking its spot and costing the momentum. And I think there's a little bit of team tactics going on here, folks, because the Nismal is now up the inside of Insubordinate, and he's squeezed into the inside into turn 7. And Insubordinate, I think in return, is saying to, well, if you're going to give me the shove out wide into turn 7, I'm going to give you the shove out wide into turn 8 and up into 9. I think there's going to be a bit of bad blood between these two drivers, because they've both gone wide and picked up penalties respectively, as the Nismal rejoins. And I do not think the Turkishman is very happy right now. The battle rages on for P4, and this is going to get Jerry R driver away, of course. And you can see Heedless has caught up very rapidly in the Peugeot as a result. And as they make their way up through turn 12, we have to flick around, because coming into the final corner right now, winning by the distance of about 4.6 seconds, is Vitor Knight as he makes his way across the line, taking the win in race 1. Congratulations to Vitor, and it will be the Audi and Bacchus who couldn't quite hold on to the win, but comes home in a comfortable second place. Jerry R driver coming home in third, 5.2 seconds down on second, and then it will be Insubordinate who just holds off Zernisval in the end, and Heedless coming home in P6 with a little penalty to burn. And then it will be the Polish driver of Luke in the Hyundai making his way across the line in P7 in the end. He'll be pleased with that result given everything that happened on the opening lap. And Spinky Biltong bringing it home in the Mitsubishi in P8. Well, he had to wait due to the incident at the start, so he'll be ruined the fact that that incident he'll feel was caused by him, but he'll have 2 more opportunities to move up the field. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of that Mitsubishi. Renwesh just about holds off Jenkster in the end. I think he made his way past somewhere around the circuit, or Jenkster's made a mistake somewhere. We can't quite confirm it. Renwesh will come home in P9 ahead of Jenkster, as they both cross the line now. And then Tamer not too far behind in the Peugeot, having had that spin earlier on at the chicane. Congratulations to all our drivers, but of course congratulations to our race winner, Vitor Knight from Portugal. That's our race 1, and subject to any stewards' inquiries or decisions, of course. Our race results then. Vitor Knight coming home by a margin of 4.7 seconds in the end, ahead of Vox Bacchus, and third place going to a Jerry R driver. A rather different podium in terms of car composition than we're used to, with an Audi R8 being right up there in the thick of it. Insubordinate coming home in P4, just ahead of Zernismal. I think that rivalry is going to go on for quite some time over the course of tonight. A bit of bad blood between the pair of them, but I think it will be settled on the track rather than off the track. And the fastest lap going to Vitor Knight, a 1:45.842 on lap number 6. Well, brilliant racing in race number 1, and I think the story to be told really is that Vitor Knight needs to nail that start, because he got swamped at the start, and Bacchus will want to do the exact same again. And I'm sure the guys starting behind him, i.e. Jerry, Insubordinate, Zernismal and Heedless, will all want to swamp that Hyundai going into turn 1. They've got the legs on it if he doesn't nail the start, and that is something that is going to be on Vitor's mind for sure. As we take a look back at trackside right now, and we wait for race number 2 to get underway. I think race number 2 is probably going to be the best part of a minute or so away, and we say hello to Benjeet in the chat as well, and we hope, of course, those of you who tuned in recently are doing well and having a good week so far. Only 2 days to go until the weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Let's savour it. Fine, we'll show off that Atenza livery. There you go. I swear that Lerb in the Twitch chat is actually paid by Mazda to demand that I only show the Mazda Atenza in these races. But jokes aside, always happy to show different liveries, and some fantastic liveries brought up and down the field via drivers here. But now we're just waiting, as I think we do have a driver potentially trying to find his way out into the field. No, they're just readying up. And we have just had confirmation that the incident where Insubordinate did go flying off the circuit at turn 1 on lap number 2 was contact due to a Jenkster. We've had that just confirmed to us by trackside stewards, but unfortunately it was a harmless incident in terms of Jenkster didn't realise that the Atenza was going to brake as early. By comparison, the Porsche is very strong on its brakes into flat corners, and as a result the Porsche just simply broke a bit too late and didn't anticipate how early Insubordinate was braking. So it's all well and good, and our drivers owning up to things, and that's what's good to see. We're getting a lot of sportsmanship up and down the field from our drivers tonight, but of course we want to get ready to race once again, so we are just waiting. We get our time of day changed, so this will mean that we are going to be heading back out for race number 2 any moment now. And I think, well, it's all going to come down to that start once again. All the anticipation, all the factors in terms of will we see Vitor Knight just run away with it? Alternatively, will we see a repeat of race number 1 and then Vitor's got to try and cut his way back up to the lead? We're going to see that all down to that race start. As we hop back to trackside, and Heedless now is making his way around out the pit lane and down towards turn 1. He'll want to get that Peugeot out there. As he makes his way down towards turn 1, we're just going to very briefly hop on board. Flick the camera back forward, of course. And you can hear the sound of that RCZ and its turbo going to work. And Heedless really been an unsung driver of EU Division 3 and a newcomer as well, as I understand it, to GTSRL as of season 38 and reveling in his first season. He's really been enjoying it so far. He was telling me pre-race today, as well as advising me how to pronounce his name, and I can pronounce the first part of it correctly. Heedless. It's the second part, which I think it's Sides, but I'm just staying with Heedless because I don't want to completely butcher a name again. But really enjoyed his time in GTSRL in his debut season, and we look forward to seeing even more from the Scotsman in race number 2, which should be getting underway any moment now. Well, I do hope it's any moment now, because I've got an itch to scratch. I think we've all got itches to scratch right now, and we all need some more racing excitement. Just hop over to the Polishman and Luke, who's decided to do a little bit of rallycross out of turn 9, and the gravel says, I will not comply and I'll send your Hyundai into the right hand wall instead. And now Luke's just parking the car up there. I think he's just waiting to go. As he returns to the pits, and it's just Heedless right now running around on the circuit and making sure we don't get the pit camera glitch bug. We are having some technical issues, I believe, right now, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to some drivers can't hear our trackside steward and our racing host, i.e. Pies. So I think we're just trying to get that sorted very quickly before we get underway with race number 2. So you're just going to have to bear with us a little bit longer. There's going to be a slight delay here to start in the second race. And in fact, we get to see the Atenza now out on circuit for a little bit. And that is one very different livery, I must say. As he gets it under control there. And we say hello to XDevo in the chat. Now, for those wondering who is XDevo, well, also Shidevo, XDevo, depends on how you pronounce the XI. He is a racing member and one of the prospective managers of the Zephyx Esport Motor Racing Team. And a very friendly guy. Feel free to say hello to him in the chat as well. Awesome dude. I hope you're doing well and having a good day, my friend. We're just waiting to get underway with a little bit more racing right now. We are patiently waiting. I think we've got some technical issues down in the paddock right now with regards to a couple of drivers not being out here. But here we go then, race number 2. As soon as I say that, we get underway. Here we go, folks. 6 laps. Who's going to be the winner by the end of it? Will we see Vitor pick up the double? So as we pan down to the grid then, it is Vitor Knight on your right hand side and the Audi of Vox Bacchus on the left hand side. Behind them, Jerry R. Driver and Instavon, the DBR9 and a Tenza Power behind will be looking to jump the guys on the front row. Keep your eye out, however, for Heedless. What can he do from P6? And it's go, go, go for all of our drivers as Vox Bacchus once again gets a very strong start and Vitor Knight is swamped for the second time at the start. But this time as he drops down the order to P4, you can see him on the left-hand side of your camera shot in amongst the midfield. He only has, he has both Aston Martins to contend with. In fact, you can see that Jerry Ardro and Zanizmo have charged up the field and Vitor Knight immediately goes on the tactical offensive by throwing the car at the side of Zanizmo into turn 1. And as they make their way up through 3, Vitor will not want this. And Spinky Biltong, how on earth has that even got there and it's spinning out? No, not for Spinky. You don't want to see that. Well, that was going from great to awesome to terrible, and Spinky is out of the running order for the time being. And as they make their way up towards turn number 5, you can see Zanizmo on the inside versus Vitor Knight, and Vitor just can't find a way around the outside as they go charging down towards turn number 7, and he's got 2 Aston Martins that he's going to have to drag race past or out corner as the 2 Aston Martin teammates are coming to blows with one another up through turn 8, and they will not want to be doing this for too long because if they fight, they're going to give the Portuguese driver behind him literally a red cape to chase after. He'll be like a bull to a cape, and he will literally try and get past them both in one go as they're side by side coming down in towards turn number 10, and Jerry R. Driver is not looking settled in that car right now as they make their way through, and you can see that Vitor is trying to pounce, and he's pounced on one already. He's up the inside into turn 12. A risky gamble move, and Renwish is trying to follow him through as the Zanizmo falls down the order and goes wide out of turn 12, and he will not be happy with that. And Jenkster, well, look where he's come from. He's come from all the way in the back, and now he's up to P5. So the Porsche driver already doubling his way up the field as they come out the final corner to start lap number 2. It is Vox Bacchus ahead of Jerry R. Driver, followed by Vitor Knight, then Renwish, and then our top 5 round up by Jenkster, and then we've got Tamir in P6. The Egyptian driver doing a fantastic job as he makes his way in the battle with his friendly Peugeot driver Heedless. They both make their way in towards turn 1 here. It's some pug on pug action, and it's going to be Heedless going up the inside of Tamir here for P6 into the braking zone, and I think it's all said and done for the time being as the Zanizmo in P8 recovering after going off at turn 12 now has to fight his way all the way up through the field. Luke in P9, Spinky Biltong in P10 after that brilliant start all going wrong at turn 3. It looks like he had contact and insubordinate all the way down the back of the field. The American has had a difficult start to this one, but up front right now, Vitor and Jerry R. Driver battling coming out of turn 3, and Vitor went round the outside on the brakes, and now he goes very deep into turn 5, and you can see as they make their way out of their hairpin here that Vitor won't have the momentum initially, but he does have that acceleration advantage over Jerry in the low gears, and he's got it done as Jerry goes incredibly deep. And I think there was contact between him and Renwish because Renwish parks it up, albeit parks up on the racing line. And Renwish gets a tail slapper there. And look who's trying to jump up into P4. It's Heedless. He's making his way up the order. The Scotsman is charging. It's Scotland, the brave in Spain. And he comes up towards turn number 10 for the second time of asking. But Jerry Ardro tries to go to the inside. He doesn't find a way through. And Zanizmo is back with his teammate. And surely we're not going to see the 2 teammates coming to blows again in the Aston Martins. We've got red on both of the cars, but we don't want there to be blood between the drivers, not bad blood. That would be absolutely awful. But meanwhile, up front, you can see that the gap between Bacchus and Vitor is closing at a sensational rate of knots. And I think Vitor's decided, you know what, I'm getting this job done before we get to the halfway point. And Jenkster is in P3. Well, how about that? The Welshman in the Porsches literally come out of nowhere, and you can see he's made it up through the field by just not being in the instance as the two Aston Martin drivers go side by side in the drag race down towards turn 1. I can't believe this, folks. You've got to be kidding. Unless I'm mistaken, they're going to battle all the way through, and Jerry, our driver, on the inside of his teammate, gets the move done, and Redwish will look to capitalise on the loss of momentum from Zanaismal. Meanwhile, up front, Vox Bacchus with pressure from Vitor Knight right now. And I think it's only going to be a matter of time because before there's the attempt, and you can see that Bacchus using the cornering abilities of that Audi to get such a nice apex speed through turn 4. But as they come down to 5 now, this is where Vitor gains so much. And in the battle for P4, we can see that Jenkster versus Heedless right now. Jenkster leading that P3 position and flashing his lights. I think he flashes his lights every time he stamps on the brakes. It might be his controller malfunction or something along those lines. But as they make their way down towards turn number 7 on lap number 3, we've got Renwish who's trying to find a way into the fight for P7, and he goes off, and he's going to have to rejoin gradually, but I think he's got ample space to Tama, who's in P8, in a quiet P8 right now. Spinky, Luke and Insubordinate all running P9 through to 11 respectively. But in this battle right now for our top 3, well, for third place, I should say, Jenkster versus Heedless, and Heedless goes insanely deep on the brakes, and he made the lunge, and he made it count. And if Jenkster hadn't turned in there when the door was open, I think Heedless would have carried through with that momentum. That Peugeot can go on those brakes, and Heedless there with a very bold move, and I think he'll be ruined the fact it just didn't quite work out as he's battling side by side with Jenkster, and there's contact between the pair of them, and Jenkster is forced wide, and there's contact with Jerry Archer. All 3 drivers getting into contact there, and Heedless presses on as Jenkster and Jerry Ardro now have to regain the time they've lost. And meanwhile, in the battle for the lead, it's all falling apart right now for all of our drivers, but for one driver who's not letting it fall apart, instead he's stitching it back together. It's Vitor Knight stitching it back for the second time of asking in 2 races, and he's made the move into turn 1 versus Vox Bacchus, a simple move, and I think Bacchus realises he knows he can't outrun Vitor Knight over the course of multiple laps. Vitor is the faster driver, but he's willing to simply take the second place and be pleased with it. And Zanaismal a long way down, 7.2 seconds down on Bacchus. He's going to have to try and make that up over the course of the next 3 laps. That is going to be a very tall order for the Turkishman. But it's just so difficult for our drivers right now because they're making all these moves and whatnot when perhaps they should just be waiting a little bit deeper into the race. And Renwish being past Jerry, our driver, Jerry will not want that as we've got a yellow flag. And who is it that's gone off? Somewhere, it's Vox, but no, hold on, who's gone off somewhere? Where? We have got Luke who's just parked up on trackside. Now, I'm not sure what's happened to Luke's car here, but it seems to be stuck on the exit of turn 5 running into 6. We have our first retirement of race number 2. It is the Polishman Luke. No, he's getting the car moving. He was just getting clear of people, so Luke is a lap down. That's unfortunate for the Polishman. And Vitor Knight going very deep out of the turn 10 airpin. And Vox Bacchus having the lunge on the inside into 11, but find himself on the outside into turn 12. And that's where Vitor will come back in with the grip. And he's got the inside line, of course, and Bacchus really coming alive right now in that battle for P1 as we see Zanaismal is trying to catch up. He's closed the gap by 2 tenths, but not by much, and Heedless is looking on in the rearview mirror as we see that Bacchus are losing out on the exit of the chicane there, and Vitor Knight is now starting to break away once again. But Bacchus keeping Vitor honest. I think he'll be grateful for the fact he's able to do that, and he will take that into the final race, I'm sure of that, as we see Jenkster right now, how it's gone from so good to so bad in the fact that he started off so well, made all his way up to P3, and then a couple of instants later he's down in P7, but still he is moving up the field, just not at the rate he perhaps would have liked in the dream scenario. And Tamir in P8 right now, we're a nice 10-second gap to this man right here, Spinky Bouton, who's making his way through the final corner and up onto lap number 5. And speaking of Spinky, let's take a look at that race start, which was a phenomenal start as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. So you'll see that already straight into turn one, going so late on the brakes. He lunged it in and he made it work. A little bit of contact with Heedless, and he simply had all the space. Everybody was pushing one another out the way, but not Spinky. And as he comes up through turn number 3, there's going to be a little bit of contact with Instabord, or is it he just goes wide? He just went wide out onto the AstroTurf, and that's what spun him, and Heedless almost followed him. But that was so unfortunate for the Mitsubishi driver. As we look back to our live action right now, we can see that Vitor Knight is pulling away very gradually from Vox, but not at the rate he was in race 1. In fact, Vox is getting closer and closer under braking. I think it may be the case that the Audi driver has found some hidden pace, as we see behind, well, Zanai's around Heedless in the unchanged positions, but Renwish right now, having picked up a half-second penalty, going out of turn number 9, running wide out there. And doing a very good job, actually, of keeping Jerry, our driver, away from him for the time being. And the gap between them both being 1.7 seconds. But when he has to burn that penalty, Renwish is going to lose a huge amount of time. And that's going to be probably the equivalent of about 1.2 seconds on that start-finish straight. As Jerry, our driver, goes wide out of turn 12. The Aston Martin's really struggling. And Jerry, in particular, just not able to get the car nailed down anymore. It's almost as if he's driving a different machine this time. Because in race 1, it was so strong. But now it's just not working out. And in that battle for P7, well, Jenkster in a lonely place, and it's Spinky Bouton who's actually found a way past Tamir, and I believe he's done that in the run to turn 12. Let's find out. So as he's coming out of the turn 10 hairpin, then I think we're going to see that Tamir was just simply very slow out of the hairpin. I think he might have actually made a mistake, and Tamir goes deep, and as a result, Spinky, with the Mitsubishi's grip there, just was able to go up the inside. A move well done. As we come on to that final lap then, and our drivers are disputed quite a way around the circuit, and we can see that Vitor now 1.9 seconds clear of Bacchus, but that gap is oscillating a little bit and coming down when we get into the more technical sections, particularly Sector 2, and you can see that Bacchus is enjoying running in that Audi. And I think it may also be the case that he realises that if he could just improve a little bit pace on pace, lap after lap, and take that into race number 3, he could actually potentially steal the win off of Vitor Knight, depending on how the strategy plays out. Further back, Zanai Mal in a lonely 3rd place right now, and Heedless Sides in that P4, running it nice and clean in the Peugeot, and he's got Renwish closing down, but it's a 3-second gap, and I think he's done everything as the Scotsman as he makes his way up to the hairpin for the final time of this race. And as we see up front, coming through at the chicane, where he's recovered it again after a difficult start, it's going to be 2 out of 2 for the Portuguese as he makes his way into the final corner. No more mistakes needed. It's going to be Vitor Knight bringing it home once again, but the gap this time a lot tighter, and Bacchus will know that a win is within arm's reach right now as he crosses the line, does the Brit. Zanai Mal in the end recovering to a P3. It wouldn't have been the race he wanted, but the Turkish would all be happy with that. And then Heedless coming home in P4, running wide out the final corner. He needs to get across the line before that gap drops, and we see Renwish coming home in P5, Jerry, our driver, in P6, Jenkster, he'll be coming through the final corner now in P7 with the Porsche. And as he comes around the final corner, he'll be happy that he's moved up the field, but not happy as to what it could have been a top 5 for sure. And Spinky Bouton, having had that glorious start at the beginning of this race, dropping all the way down to the back of the field, but recovering to P8. And then Tamir coming home in P9. He'll be pleased, picking up some good valuable points for the team in the Peugeot. Instabord coming home in P10. As he makes his way into the final quarter here, the Attends are not having a good day this time, but he's got it all to make up in the final race of tonight. And then last but not least, a lap down right now, so he'll be finishing only 5 laps as I understand it. It will be a Luke from Poland as he makes his way through the final sequence of corners, carrying on in true racing spirit here, making his way through, cutting a bit of the turn 14 curb, and I think he might be picking up a small half-second penalty for that cut. Indeed, he picks up a 1-second penalty, in fact, and as he makes his way across the line here, he brings it home in last of our running positions. So that's race number 2, and congratulations to our race winner, Vitor Knight. So as we take a look at our final race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course, We can see Vito Knight winning by 1.8 seconds ahead of Bacchus this time round. Zanaismal coming home in P3 in the end ahead of Heedless Sideace and also Remwesh. Two very different drivers coming home in P4 and P5, and they'll be pleased with those results and looking to go that a little bit further and perhaps sneak a podium in if the circumstances should arise. Vito Knight picking up the fastest lap on lap number 2 there with a 46.477 on lap number 2. And now really we wait for race number 3. And I'll tell you one thing, folks. In that race, it had everything. It had ups, it had downs, it had dream moments, it had nightmare moments. But I really think that this man right here, Scott of Heedless, did a fantastic job to bring home that P5. And I think if things had worked out a little bit differently with that lunge into turn 10, he would have required Jenkster to be compliant. But if Jenkster had not tried to shut the door as he turned into the apex as he was trying to make the corner, if he'd seen that Heedless was coming, it could have been very different. Perhaps we could have even seen a P3 for the Peugeot. Oh God, that would be one crazy scenario. But of course, it didn't work out that way. And instead, we now wait to get going once again. We're just taking a brief breather there, folks, and a sip of water. And I think there's Zanaismal complaining that he wasn't able to find his braking point for turn 1 in race number 2. I think some of the trackside markers he was perhaps using have disappeared over the course of the time of day change, and as a result going down there to do a little bit of reconnaissance work into turn 1 to identify his braking markers. And we are hearing, by the way, that with regards to this man right here, the Polish driver Luke, the reason why we saw him parked up on the exit of turn 5 is that his paddle shifter is failing. He is having trouble in the car getting gears changed. He is, however, going to try and do race number 3. It's great spirit to see, and I'm sure all of you watching will want to give your own round of applause for the fact that this man is going to carry on, and even if he ends up coming dead last, he's going to try and get the car around for race number 3. They're going to try and get the car into the best possible state, the team, and then just see what he can do with it. So we'll be keeping our eyes out for him and seeing whether he's able to rise from the back of the field at all. But that's the spirit we love to hear. As we now wait to get underway once again. Doing okay, thank you, Stevo. Losing my voice gradually, but I always lose my voice with the amount of action that happens in these races. Loving it and doing the best I can. I'm sorry to hear you've got a third lockdown in France. And I hope things are able to be resolved, of course. We'd all like to go back to a normal way of life, not all these lockdowns and that. But whilst we are in lockdown and even afterwards, I'll do my best to bring the sim racing commentaries that you love and try to make it as close as possible to the real world motorsport as well. We've got to take everything we can in hand and just keep smiling all the way through until the very end and stay positive. Got a couple of drives going for a comfort break whilst we get the time of day change, of course, for race number 3. Now, talking about strategy, 11 laps. We know that in the case of the Hyundai in particular, the tyres do start to go off around lap 6 or 7. So the Hyundai is a bit of a gamble in terms of its tyres. And it's not one where you can go really all the way to the end of the race on the same set of tyres unless you've got a significant pace advantage and a major gap coming into the pits. Vitor, I suspect, what the fact that he is running the Hyundai, what he may choose to do is go along on his first set of tyres and then pit, say, around lap 7 or 8 to switch to a fresh set and then come out and put in some really strong laps to wrap up the race. Unless he gets really clear of the rest of the field, then he may decide, you know what, he's going to pit on lap 10 and stay on the same set of tyres. We'll wait and find out. The Aston Martins, meanwhile, are not too aggressive on their tyres and could potentially make it to the end without a tyre change, but they still do have to make that pit stop. As for the drivers who are not in either of those machines, so Backus, for example, in the Audi, the issue with the Audi is as soon as the tyres start to go off, you get that additional tyre wear because the car will start to naturally oversteer through corners, and that's something that Backus will be aware of, and he'll probably have planned out when to change those tyres over. I suspect it's probably going to be on lap 6. If he is going to go for an additional set of tyres, that's what he'll pit to maximise his pace. The Atenza, very stable, and I get the feeling that Insaboda will either decide to go for a new set of tyres or not based on where he is on track at the point he pits. But in terms of the general pit strategy, we saw in EU Division 1 on Monday that pitting at the end of lap number 1, if you do it by yourself, can be effective, but not when multiple drivers do it. You all start tripping over one another and costing one another tyre life, and also pace the guys in front. Early pit stops are probably going to happen on laps 2, 3 and 4. The late pit stops will probably happen on laps 9 and 10. And, well, the typical theme has been pitted around the midpoint, to be honest. Typically laps 5 to 7, that's where we see the majority of the pit stops, particularly in EU Division 2 last night. But we are just waiting to get underway, and in the meantime, so as to prove to you what, I'm not being paid by Mazda to advertise their cars right now. We're going to see a Hyundai in the wall, unfortunately, at turn number 5, and I think Luke is just trying to get things fixed. It's not looking good for Luke. He's going to try and get it fixed as best he can. And Jerry R. driver making his way up the hill now towards turn number 9. And we're just counting down. We should be having all our drivers back very shortly. We can see Luke still trying to get that car fixed. He's trying to test that paddle shifter to see whether it's going to work. He's going up and down through the gears, like a pianist going up and down the scale. And we're hopeful he is able to get that car in some sort of functioning shape, because it would be good to have him out on circuit with the 10 other drivers as well. I mean, he could turn Ayrton Senna and complete the entire race in literally, say, 4th gear or 5th gear. Well, not complete the entire race. Senna, to be fair, brought the car home at the Brazilian Grand Prix, the first one he ever won at Brazil, I believe. His first win on, I think it was the 8th attempt to try, and in the end he had to run the car home in what was 4th gear. And we're going with race number 3 then, folks. We are about to get underway. 11 laps. Who is going to be the victor by the end of the strategy race? Let's wait and find out. So as we pan down to the grid then, it's Vitor Knight on your right once more and Vox Bacchus on your left hand side. Behind them, Zanizmal and Heedless. Behind them, Remwesh and Jerry R. Driver. And what can Jerry R. Driver do this time from P6 or in subordinate from P10? Both looking to make their way up the field. And it's lights out and away we go, and Bacchus having a very difficult start there. I think he got caught out a little bit, but Vitor Knight as well. And it means that Zanizmal has been the one to get the launch tonight. So as they go down towards turn 1, we are going to see the Turkish for Zanizmal running clear of the field initially into the heavy braking zone. And we can see behind Jerry Ardra trying to find a way up the inside of Bacchus, but there wasn't the route. And there's a huge amount of contact between multiple drivers there. I think a lot of drivers got caught up in the concertina and had to push their way through. And there's going to be a lot of questions about what happened there. We'll be sure to let you know about that in due course, folks. But the story is now, because of the contact, Jerry Ardra has dropped all the way down the field, along with another driver who we can't quite remember the name of right now, but Heedless up to P3. Vitor Knight dropped down to P4, but will be on that charge as he makes his way up towards turn 5, making his way on that charge up towards turn P1 once again, like he has done in the previous races. And behind it's Subordinate getting spun out as well, and we see that Spinky has dropped out of the order there. There has been a lot of carnage, and we're not even halfway into the first lap, and I think a lot of drivers are just feeling the blood going to the head there and seeing a lot of red as they're making their way around. And Heedless not getting the best run out of turn 9. I think in the run down towards turn number 10, it's going to be a formality of Vitor Knight on the inside under braking. As they go through the corner here, I think Vitor's got it done, and the Peugeot has got no response. As in the battle for P7, we can see that Luke and Speaky Bill Todd coming to blows, and Tamu has spun out, and he's literally got stuck there, and Luke and Speaky both going into the side, losing the progress they had made. That is so unfortunate, as Sabuna also has to stop for the recovering cars. Goodness me, it has been a crazy opening lap, but what I can tell you is they come out the final corner to go on to lap number 2. Zanayasval will have to burn a half-second penalty. He'll be in the lead for the time being, but Remwesh is chasing after him, 1.3 seconds to gap. 1.7 seconds behind is Vitor Knight, followed by 8 tenths down Heedless, and then it is Jenkster in P5 right now, with his teammate Voxbacker's chasing behind him, 1.8 seconds, and then it's Luke, the Polishman, racing with the crippled gearbox in that Hyundai, making his way down towards turn 1 in P7. Jerry R driver in P8, Insport at P9, Tama and Spinky both coming into the pits on lap number 1. The Egyptian ahead of Spinky, the British driver coming in last right now. And as our drivers make their way round into Sector 2 then on lap number 2, we can see that there's no real gains being made by anyone right now, and it's a good opportunity to find out what happened on that race start. So you're going to see, as they make their way down towards turn 1, you're going to see Jerry R driver on the left-hand side of your picture here. He comes charging down towards turn 1. He tries to find a way up the inside of Bacchus. Bacchus leaves the door open, but there wasn't really a way for him to go, and he gets caught by that, and that's how Bacchus and also Jerry R driver got spun. Because they lost so much momentum through the contact between one another, then they were vulnerable to all the cars coming through, and that's why everything kicked off as it did. It's very unfortunate, but I think there's going to be some words by the stewards after this one once again, but nonetheless it is what it is, and we press on as the Turkish Williams Zanayasval is being reeled in by both Remwesh and also Vitor Knight. It looks like Zanayasval's just not feeling comfortable in that Aston Martin. He was in qualifying, hold on a second, I think we had an overtake between Bacchus and his teammate. We're just going to take a quick look back. I think that was into turn 10, and it was more of a formality as the Audi driver made his way into the corner. Jenks actually went defensive there, it's worth pointing out, but went completely wide, missed his braking point and went wide, and Bacchus just took the place. Well, that's one way of giving the place to your teammate, and we can see that both Remwesh and Vitor both picking up penalties, giving Zanayasval the opportunity to break away just for a little while. So does Zanayasval being given a lucky break here, and we see Heedless, it's now up into P3. The Peugeot fights on, and he's up onto the podium. Could we see the pug on the podium? I mean, it's a long shot, ladies and gentlemen, but we will wait and see. This is something else, as Vitor now has to find his way back past the RCZ again, and I think he's going to be doing it before they get into turn 4. He's got the momentum, he's going to go up the inside of Heedless, and as they go into the braking zone for turn 4, I think Heedless is just going to stay on the outside and not fight this one. I think he knows he's just got to be consistent, he doesn't have to fight. And as they make their way down towards turn number 5 on lap number 3, you can see that Heedless just following Vitor Knight in on the racing line right now, and nothing too major, as behind Bacchus has broken away from his teammate. The gap between himself and Jenkster, 2.7 seconds as they come into turn 5, and Bacchus just planting it and going chasing now after the race leaders, as Jenkster gets it very wrong on the apex of turn 5 and has lost a lot of momentum, and Jerry R driver is now closing out, having got up to P7 with everything that's happened. The Dutchman is now going for some serious racing and will want to get back onto that podium. He is going to have to absolutely hammer the life out of that Aston Martin. And hold on a second, Vitor has dropped down the order once again to P4. What has happened to Vitor? This is becoming thematic. I think he went wide out of turn 9 because he's dropped between Heedless before we saw it on the camera. So Heedless right now, that consistency is paying off. And Vitor, perhaps he's just creeping in a little bit. Perhaps he overexerted himself in races 1 and 2. We're not 100% sure, but he's just letting mistakes creep in now when he doesn't need them. It's there for the taking, a podium if not the race win, but he just can't afford to make mistakes because Remwesh right now in P2, 2.6 seconds down, and Zanayasval has been looking pretty fast when he can keep that car straight and on the narrow, and it means right now Vitor finding himself in the best part of what is 7.2 seconds off our race leader, and he's got it all to do as we see the rear view camera shot there, folks. Jenkster battling with Jerry R driver for P6 at the run down to turn 1 on lap number 4. Jenkster on the outside going onto the grass, and meanwhile Jerry R driver on the inside, and I think Jerry's got it done here, although Jenkster's going to go late on the brakes, and he he tries to turn in on the inside of Jerry, but there's a whole load of car there. He's not going to be able to, and it's Savona gets the move done on Luke for P8 into turn 1 as well, which we saw in the rear of the camera shot whilst looking at Jenkster and Jerry. So 2 moves into 1 corner there, and now we look back up front and we can see that, hold on, there's a lot of dust being kicked up off of the exit of turn 4. I don't think anything's happened there, but Jerry Ardriver holding off Jenkster at turn 4, and now they make their way into turn 5 as well. And it looks as though the battles have settled down just a little bit for the time being. But it's anyone's guess that what could happen at this point, as we see Speaky built on the Mitsubishi just not having a good day at the races in P10 right now, albeit he has pitted, of course, as has Tamer, albeit Tamer, I think, has made a mistake somewhere to be so far back off the guy who pitted right in front of him. But nonetheless, as we continue, we can see that no pit stops for our race leaders right now. They're all going to at least the halfway point of this race. I don't reckon we're going to see any of them pit at the end of this lap. I think we might see our first pit stop for our race leaders at the end of lap number 5. As they make their way through the chicane, then you can see that the gap between Zanaismail and Remwish is gradually opening up, but it's by a very small margin, and it's the same factor where Vitor Knight is closing that gap down to Remwish very gradually and heedless right now, going wide off the chicane there, and I think he's going to be picking up a half-second penalty to compound the mistake he's made and the time he's lost through that. Well, they may not have, depending on how it's treated. No, he went out onto the gravel, so it's not treated as a track cut penalty, and he continues on his way. And Bacchus will have seen that and think, right, perhaps I can come back for P4 now. Now the Peugeot seems to be struggling as Jenkster makes his way into the pits. The pit crew are out and looking to make the first pit stop for the Welsh racing team. Now this could be a gamble in terms of Jenkster pitting at this point. He may find himself jumping up a few places if he plays his cards right here in the battle with the guys up front, because he'll just need to simply nail those laps. Everybody's spaced out on track right now, folks, and not too much to talk about in terms of imminent battles, but this is where it normally plays out in these strategy races, where everything seems to calm down and they get concertinas together on the last couple of laps. But what I can say in terms of drivers getting close together is that Heedless is being reeled in at a significant rate of knots here by Bacchus as we look to Heedless's car, and we look back from the Peugeot driver here, who on the previous lap set a 150.3, and I think he's just having a bit of difficulty in getting that Peugeot stabilised. Now the tyre wear's starting to come in, and Bacchus looks to the inside at turn 7. It's not a place you normally overtake going up the hill through 8, but Bacchus is all over the back of the Peugeot as the Audi driver tries to find a way through. He's got the momentum, and as they come out of 9 here, will there be a move to the inside? Will Heedless blocks off the inside? So if Bacchus is going to do it, he's going to need to be smart on the cutback from the outside. They go onto the brakes, and you can see Heedless goes a bit deep there, but Bacchus gets a tail spin, and he loses that. He collects it, but he loses the pace and the momentum, and he's got it all to do again. Has the Audi driver, and as we look at his tyres, they're in good nick at the moment. But I think he's having a bit to quit as Nicemal comes into the pits from the lead, as does Remwish. Now Vitor Knight carries on here. This is going to be a huge factor in the race now, because we've had our 2 race leaders pit so early. We thought they might go a little bit longer, but they are the first 2 to pit. We did call that some pit stops would come on lap 5, but we didn't expect it to be our race leaders. We expected them to go longer, and this is going to bring them out somewhere in the region of about P5, P6, based on how things are playing out right now. As we can see that Jerry, our driver, is coming along the start finish straight down into turn 1, and Luke, the Hyundai driver here, I think he's going to just appear a little bit behind Zanaismail as we flip the camera to Zanaismail, and you'll see into turn 1. Remwish also just about jumps Luke as he gets a little bit sideways coming out of the pits there. Almost cutting across the pit exit line. Well, I think he got it together just in time, and looking back we can see that Luke now up into P7 for the time being and playing it smart and just nursing that Hyundai all the way home. He just got to get to the end of the race. Insubordinate coming out of the pits as well now, and he is ahead of Speaky Biltong, and he's ahead of a Jenkster as well. So I think Insubordinate picking the right time to pit, and as we look back around the field here, we can see that with Vitor Knight now breaking clear of Heedless and Bacchus. Bacchus is reeling Heedless in once again, but that gap, remember, it comes down, but then Bacchus has got to get past the Peugeot, and so far when he's gone for the move past, it's gone wrong. So he's going to have another opportunity, probably within the next couple of laps, but we'll wait and see what happens. And of course, Heedless could throw wind to his plans right now and simply say that he's going to change tyres. And speaking of changing tyres, we're just going to check. We can see that Jerry, our driver, has still got to use his tyres up, and Zanaismail definitely took tyres, as did Remwish. So they both took tyres. They're going for the extra grip and therefore the faster lap times deeper into the race, as Heedless right now clearly not got the pace of Bacchus' Audi in his Peugeot, but still as they make their way out the final corner, they both go on to lap number 7. And as they charge around once again here, I think it's going to be the case where it's going to be the Scotsman versus the Welshman, as we see the crew come out for Jerry R. Driver, who is coming in to the pits. So they're ready to go to service the Dutchman, and that is going to freeze an Eismau, of course, who is now going to come back up into P4. The two teammates staying clear of each other this time. I think they've realised not to fight one another anymore as they both come down towards turn number 1, albeit Jerry R. Driver will after going through his pit stop. Now we see Vitor Knight up front, opening the gap up to 9.2 seconds, and we're going to stay with our battle for P2 right now, although we do have some sort of major incident occurring up towards the chicane. I'm hearing from the trackside officials there has been a major crash up at the chicane, and we will find out what's happened very shortly for you folks. But we can see that Heedless really just feeling the pressure right now from Bacchus. Goes deep into turn 5, and Bacchus goes to capitalise into 6-7. Can he get it on the brakes into 7? It's a dangerous place to overtake, and Heedless does the job for it by going out to the grass there. That's unfortunate, just a little bit of a mistake there from Heedless, but still in the fight for P2 out on track and in the fight against Fox Bacchus, albeit he's just got to get his composure back right now, because that was a difficult one for him to perhaps stomach. As we look further around, and I think there was some sort of major incident at the chicane. We're just going to double check that for you. So we can see here Jenkster making his way up towards the chicane, and well, insubordinate burning a penalty here, but somebody got it wrong at the chicane. Was it Jenkster who got it wrong? It was insubordinate who went into the wall. So he got a tail slapper out of the chicane and then went into the wall there. So that explains what happened, folks. We're trying to figure out what happened there, because we saw a car sideways at that corner and he simply just got it wrong on exit. Well, that explains it, as Heedless comes into the pits then from what was P3 at the time, but I think out on track right now is effectively in the region of P5, and I think Remwesh is going to be coming past Heedless, as is an Eismau. But what about Luke? But do keep in mind that I think Luke has yet to take his pit stop, and he will need to do so soon. And Bacchus, of course, needs to take his pit stop, as does Vitor Knight. Now, in terms of gaps right now, as we see Luke skidding it across the track there to burn his penalty, getting off the racing line, albeit he didn't need to skid it that far, perhaps. We can see that Vitor Knight has got a gap of 11.2 seconds to Bacchus, so he's definitely clear of Bacchus, who's also got to pit. But Zanaismal right now is only 19 seconds down on the Portuguese, and that is danger territory for Vitor Knight. Zanaismal should, theoretically, as he's brought that gap down even more on those fresher tyres, he should be able to come out in front of Vitor, of course, unless Vitor doesn't take tyres in the pits. Then it'll get very, very dicey between the pair of them. Of that we are sure, but we expect that Vitor is going to be absolutely hammering it right now to try and stay ahead coming out of the pits. And will Vitor react by pitting at the end of this lap, or will he go long and just simply see what he can do at the end of the race? And with Heedless coming out of the pits, we can see that Luke is behind him, so he hasn't dropped the place to Luke, which is good for Heedless because it means he won't get held up. But as we look further up front once again, we can see that Bacchus coming up to a lap Tamir right now, Tamir being a lap down on our leaders. Pardon me. And really at this point, again, spaced out a bit as Tamir goes for a rallycross line there coming into turn 13. I think he's just simply made a mistake and had to collect the car. And as he collects it, it goes flying off there into the chicane. But Bacchus doing everything he needs to stay clear of the rampant Peugeot as he makes his way onto a lap number 9. And we see no pit stops coming up for the time being from any of our drivers who have yet to take a pit stop. And as they all make their way around on to lap number 9, well, the big question will be, where will Vitor Knight come out when he does pit in amongst Remwesh and Zanaismal? Personally, my prediction will be that he's got enough over Remwesh that he could go for a fresh pair of tyres just about, I think. But Zanaismal's a completely different story. 25 seconds is the gap from Remwesh to Vitor Knight, whereas from Zanaismal to Vitor, it's the best part of 18 to 17 seconds. It's varying lap on lap, and Vitor will have that in his mind, I am sure, as we see Luke in P6 right now, chasing after Heedless. But again, he does have to take that pit stop at some point, and Jerry R. Driver will know that, and he will be trying to close up to Luke in rapid order. Spinky Biltong right now also 8 seconds down, and he is clear of Jenkster, who's in P9. So I think the Mitsubishi driver here is just going to nurse that car home, having pitted at the end of lap number 1 and gained 2 places, because he's in P10 when he pitted, gained 2 places as a result of that pit stop so far. And Vitor has picked up a penalty, so this is going to factor in, and this is not what Vitor will want. A half-second penalty for track limits at turn 9 we're hearing, and he will not want this. This is going to compromise any time he's gained on this lap, because he will have to burn it on that start-finish straight. And as he comes through the chicane in, does he pit this time in order to shrug off the penalty as part of the pit stop? We see him come through the chicane, and is he going into the pits? He is going into the pits, so he is going to react. He is going to come in, and the question will be, how does it play as Backus has got a like-for-like penalty here, and he comes through the chicane, and will Backus pit here, or will he go one more lap? No, he goes in on the second-to-last pit stop available lap. As he comes into the pits, then it is Neismau who is going to be the one to watch now. Has he done enough by pitting at the midpoint of the race? The Turkishman comes out the final corner. He begins lap number 10, and as we pan down towards turn number 1, you'll see that the camera is going to switch around. On your right side of shot is Neismau, but look on your left. Where is the Portuguese? And he's done it. He has jumped Vitor Knight. What about Remwish? Will he have also had the opportunity to get past Vitor Knight with Vitor taking the pit stop there and then? No, he hasn't. So Remwish has got to do it the hard way. And Vitor did not take the change of tyres, but it's gone wrong. And now Remwish must know that Vitor has not taken that change of tyres, and he can capitalise with 1 to 2 laps to go. And it means that he has got to go full hammer and tongs, because that is an injured Hyundai in terms of its tyres are old. And so Remwish on those fresher tyres in his Aston Martin has got to go for it if he wants to get second place. Backus has come out in P4, well ahead of Heedless by the space of 4.9 seconds. So Backus, I think, will be comfortable in this, and he didn't take a change of tyres, so he just decided to pit and as the standard stop and go comfortable on his current tyres. And Heedless haven't gone for that fresh pair of tyres, well, not that fresh pair of tyres, in fact he didn't go for a tyre change. So a lot of our drivers not changing tyres here and just trying to get the one up on one another, but it hasn't quite worked out for Heedless. He's not close enough to mount a change to Backus, but if he can keep ahead of Jerry, our driver, who is closing him down. And we have got a spin, hold on a second, we have got a spin at turn number, I think that was a lap driver perhaps, but Remwish and Vitor battling here, and what on earth has happened to Vitor? Remwish has got past. I think it might be a case of lap driver span at turn 7, but we're going to find out right now for you. And Vitor picked up a half-second penalty, so it was a second penalty combined coming out of turn number 8, and he had to burn it, and that's how Remwish got ahead. Goodness me, how the tables are turned, but Vitor will come to strike back as we move on to the final lap, and we can confirm it was Tamir who I believe spun the turn 7 exit there, but Zlaizel leads us on to last lap. But the battle we're looking to see now is the one between the Bruton of Remwish and the Portuguese of Vitor Knight. Vitor on those worn tyres. Remwish hasn't quite got the pace of Vitor on the same level of tyres, but he's got the fresher tyres, which should give him the ability to hold off the fast charging Hyundai behind him, but he's got to keep it clean, because Vitor is only 7 tenths down, and any penalties right now would destroy either driver's chance at coming home in P2. It is going to be the hardest lap of Remwish's GTSRL career so far, I reckon, as he makes his way into turn 4. He's got to now, and Vitor responds immediately by closing him down by the best part of 2 tenths initially, but it stabilises out to a tenth for a second, as we see that Aston Martin has got so much leg power as it comes out of turn 4. Into 5 they go and they come, and as they make their way now down to 6 and 7, you can see that Vitor is pushing it. He is absolutely milking the throttle, and behind in the battle for P5 we can see that Heedless is doing enough right now to hold off Jerry, our driver, but he's still got 2/3 of a lap to go as both of them make their way through turn 5, and the Peugeot struggles on trying to hold on for P5 versus Jerry, our driver, who will want that top 5 finish. But we look back to our battle for P2, and we can see that Vitor is not close enough to go for a move into turn 10, and he goes deep in turn 10. I think it's over for Vitor unless there's a penalty for Remwish at the chicane. But speaking of drivers who haven't made any major mistakes this time, as he comes through the chicane, it's going to be the Turkishman Neismau who brings it out of the final corner. He's led this race after the strategy element played out. What a brilliant drive. Neismau wins, and Remwish, having made a slight mistake at the chicane, and Vitor being up a half-second penalty, he's got 1 corner to go. He holds off the Portuguese. Vitor can't do it in the end. He comes home in P3. Backus will be coming home in P4 as he comes through the final corner. A solid drive by the Audi driver in all 3 races today. He'll be pleased with that. And then in P5, it is going to be Heedless. He holds on, I think, although it's going to be a drag race to the line. And as they come across, it is going to be the Peugeot by the margin of 1/10. And then Spanky Biltong The Mitsubishi driver having recovered to P7 after a disastrous opening lap. Behind him in subordinate in P8 it will be. And as he makes his way across the line here, the American will be ruining a night to forget. And Jenkster in P9 will be coming across the line very shortly in the Porsche. Again, a difficult night for the Welshman. And then last but not least of our drivers on the lead lap, Tamir, who's going to be finishing a lap down, has already crossed the line, folks. You can see him here, he's just making his way into turn 1. Congratulations to Tamir for P11. But it'll be the Polish winner, Luke, who falls onto the end despite the damaged transmission of that Hyundai. He's making it home in P10. Congratulations to him. That's the spirit we love to see. So congratulations to all of our drivers, but to our winner in particular, Zunay Ismail from Turkey. Well, what a race to end the night. And as we look to our race results, subject to Eddie Schwartz's inquiries, of course, and decisions, Zunay Ismail bringing home the win of race 3, breaking Vitor's streak, turning it into a 2-race streak for Vitor in tonight's round, winning by the space of 9.4 seconds ahead of Renwesh, who did a fantastic job to bring their car home in P2. Vitor just missing out on that P2 by a very small margin, albeit he had the penalty to burn, and that was the difference at the end of the day. As for P4, going to Vox Bacchus, a solid drive by the Audi driver. Didn't quite have the pace in race number 3, but was up there throughout the evening. And a top 5 once again for Heedless. Well done in the Peugeot. He'll be pleased with that one. And Jerry, our driver, just missing out and creeping ahead in that race for the top 5. Zunay Ismail setting the fastest lap on lap 7 in the final race at 1:45.777. And now, of course, we move on to King of the Karts, but congratulations to all of our drivers, and it has been a fantastic evening for the EU Division 3 guys, and indeed across the whole of all of our European divisions. It has been a fast, frantic week at Catalonia, and there has been carnage, there has been drama, there has been success, there has been stories to tell, there's just been everything. In terms of driver of the day, over the course of tonight's 3 races, I'm going to go out there, folks, and I'm going to say it was Vox Bacchus in the Audi. He picked a very different car, and he picked the right car. And whilst it didn't work out in race 3, I think his overall 1-lap pace was starting to be exposed over the course of race 3. In the opening 2 races, he picked the car to get him the solid result, and he drove it very well. He picked a car that suited his driving style. It wasn't all just the machinery, and he did very well. So Vox Bacchus takes driver of the day for me with 3 very solid results, and I think the Welshman will be pleased with that, as indeed his team will. We're just waiting for the switcheroo, of course, to King of the Karts, and in the meantime, what a crazy week of racing it has been. Oh, goodness me. But do let me know what your favourite moment of tonight's racing was. For me, I would personally say it was the brilliant move by Spinky to get all the way up the order in what was, I believe, race number 2. Obviously, let's forget what happened at turn 3, but that daring move up the inside into turn 1, where he jumped the best part of, I think, what was 4 to 5 places in the Mitsubishi, showed its brakes, and it just didn't work out for him. But what could have been in that Mitsubishi? That would have been something else. And we have the backwards car issue once again, so we will have to fix that. There we go, that's all fixed. So now I can actually drive the car, not look backwards all the time, and do a daring drive. We've got to try and get a win tonight. We came, I think it was 4th in EU Division 1. We came 2nd last night in EU Division 2. So now we've got to try and get that win in EU Division 3. We've got to keep improving. Alright, here we go then, folks. King of the Karts EU Division 3 is about to kick off. We do have some of the faces from the other divisions in here. I see an Olaf in here. We also have Pies out on circuit. So as we pan down to the grid then, I can't remember who's Karts who here. I think we're starting P3, which is good. But it's definitely going to be carnage in turn 1. It always is in King of the Karts. Oh, hello. Whoa, there was an angry... there was a cart spinning across the track across turn 2. What on earth was that? That was something else. It was like a piece of pizza flying across the sky on the radar. Oh, hello, Heedless. Got a bit of a love tap on the back here. I mean, if it was weak slipstream right now, I would be really pleased at how much Gaffer pulled over the rest of the field, but they're all going to reel me in now. Here it comes. Olaf giving me a nice big punt up the rear. Oh, good Lord. Olaf. Oh, good. Oh, God. No, oh, God. Cheeky pies. Uh-oh. No. Oh, no. Ah, darn it. It was going so well. Wait, what? Wait, what? Somebody just going round backwards on the circuit and taking everybody out? Oh dear. Well, Olaf there picking up the win. There's the Nismail. That was the Nismail going around the circuit backwards. Alrighty, folks. Well, with that concludes King of the Karts and indeed the whole of round 2. And there's your results with Olaf, Piers and Bacchus making up the podium and myself and Luke rounding off the top 5. Bacchus picking up the fastest lap on the second lap of 59.7. But thank you all very much for tuning in, and remember, next week marks the final round of Season 38 for GTSRL, and it will be at the Fuji International Speedway. Oh my good lord, the run down to turn 1. If you thought it was bad here, you're going to see a lot more drag racing and daring overtakes at Fuji, that's for sure. But we'll be back next week, same time on Monday, for plenty more racing action. But until then, thank you for tuning in. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.